Okay.
So Adrian Wojnarowski today dropped a substantial bombshell, I think is the way to put it. Like a bombshell of basketball that like I did not think would be coming, certainly, let's say. Dan Hurley and the Los Angeles Lakers have been in contact regarding their job. They have a open head coaching position. JJ Redick has been discussed in this regard. Uh, Woj has it that apparently they are very strongly considering making an absolute monster, absolute drop the bag offer. It's going to have to be, I would imagine, to Danny Hurley. I will give you the floor first. When you saw this, what was your immediate reaction?
I was shocked. I woke up to this morning and was like, what is going on? Like, we had heard the JJ Redick stuff. We talk about Connecticut a lot on here. We've been talking about Alex Caravan, Liam McNeely's a high school kid that I follow, so like, I was just thinking about that team together and stuff like that. And Hurley, who's won back to back, and is he going to be able to put a roster together to go compete for a third one? And then I'll just say, like, you have way more insight in general, just because you kind of have the pulse of these guys as coaches even more than I do across the country, not just with Hurley.
Yeah.
But to me, my thought immediately went to, okay, tactician, I love it. And I want to read what I had sent somebody, what I thought the Lakers should be looking for. I'll do that in a second after you go also. But I was like, is he going to work with NBA players? Because he just seems like psychotically intense and detailed in like the greatest way possible, but
Yeah.
not the most NBA way possible. Am I
I'm
overdoing
glad.
it?
No, I'm glad you brought it up. So, where to even begin with this? Danny Hurley is all of that. He is a very intense human being. That is not an unfair characterization. We see him animated on the sidelines. We see him losing his mind at officials. He is also very much like he is a guy that has the pulse of his locker room and brings in players to his team that like knows that like they can like handle it. Like to me, like Austin Reeves would be incredible under Danny Hurley and within this offense. Like he is the exact kind of player that Danny Hurley like would love to have because he is super smart. He can play with and without the ball and is versatile in a lot of different respects in order to, run different pieces of their schemes. So what is Danny Hurley as a schematic coach, right? In general, he runs like a very NBA style offense that generates threes and rim attempts at a super high level. They space the court super well. Ton of dribble handoffs, ton of horn stuff, some floppy stuff. Like they really do a good job of having a lot of different, sets, formations, whatever you want to call it, and then running different actions off of that, and then having a number of counters off of those actions that make it really, really hard for defenses to consistently be prepared for it.
Don't you think they run stuff really good for their personnel also that like highlights their personnel's strengths?
Absolutely correct. They do a great job of maximizing what they have. A big piece of it to me is that in their successful years, for instance, they've always had multiple ball handlers, guys who can like initiate the offense, guys who can play with the ball in their hands and, get set up. So like this year it was Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, Steph Castle. Last year it was Tristan Newton, Andre Jackson, and who am I forgetting?
Yeah.
Why am I forgetting somebody?
So I'm blanking somebody also.
Yeah, like they just had a number of different players that would be able to come in and start up the actions. Uh, Naheem Aline last year would be able to do it at times. Certainly Hassan Diarra is a point guard that can come in and do it at times. Big emphasis on having like multiple ball handlers and incredible spacing, right? That is absolutely the biggest, most important factor of a Danny Hurley led offense. And credit to where credit's due. Luke Murray deserves quite a bit of credit here. He does a really good job, designing a good portion of their offense, right? As an assistant coach too. Defensively, Hurley is very willing to play different schemes depending on the personnel that is out there. If it's Donovan Clingan, they'll play in like full scale drop, and Clingan was incredible within this, right? And I think they did a great job like teaching him how to use his body, how to backpedal at a high level, how to use his hands, and they do a great job of like teaching the details, I think, on defense. Finds guards that are really good at like getting over the top of screens, fighting. They like guys that are hyper competitors, right? Like that's the goal. Like they want dudes that are going to be there and that are going to give it all every single possession. If they have like more of a mobile big, they will like blitz the ball. Like they did that a decent amount this year with Samson Johnson, right? Last year when they had Adama Sanogo, who was like an undersized, long big that was like a little bit more mobile than he got credit for, but not overly mobile is a fair way to put it. He was almost like a show and recover, or they play a little bit more at the level for a slide and then recover kind of thing. Willing to get way more, versatile within scheme than what, just like a rigid coach is. In general, like he gives his players like a lot of freedom to be able to do what they want to do, I think, and like to be able to take advantage of the mismatches that are created. And that's kind of the last thing I want to point out. The number one thing for me with Connecticut, the last 2 years particularly, they have been the best prepared team going into every game and playing to a scout. They seem to have their team on the court, always seem to have the answers for what the defense was going to present to them. And then on top of it, or the offense, right? If they found something that worked, I think a lot of coaches at the college level, particularly not at the NBA level, I think a lot of college coaches like overcomplicate it and try and like, diversify what they're doing so that like you keep defenses guessing. Connecticut would just hammer the same thing like 8 times in a row if it was working, and say, stop it. Go ahead and stop it, please. They were always extremely detail oriented and prepared in terms of the scout. I think Hurley is like very, very clearly the best prospect for the NBA among college coaches schematically, at least. I'll get to what you said here in a second, but like, have you seen anything else that you would want to point out from having like watched a lot of Connecticut?
No, I mean, I think that's the big stuff right there. Just looking at some of the stats, they've top 5 in assists per game in the country the last 2 seasons, and they've had real floor spacers. So you talked about it, shooting threes, getting to the rim. They've had guys that could really shoot it. 2 years ago, they had, Joey Calcaterra, they had Caravan and Jordan Hawkins. Jordan Hawkins was a guy I watched a lot of film on. I was always so impressed in the ways that they used him, found him shots, Sam used his shooting gravity to get other guys shots, like putting him on the weak side, knowing that the help couldn't be there, and then running action on the strong side, throwing it over the top and getting dunked. So I love how you pointed out the different ways. They didn't ask Donovan Clingan, Adama Sanogo, and Samson Johnson over the last 2 years to be the same bigs. They would use those guys in different ways.
But in that vein too, it would have been very easy for them to slot Jordan Hawkins or Cam Spencer this year directly into the same exact role that Jordan Hawkins played last year,
That's a
but they
great
didn't.
point. They did not.
They used him more on the ball. They used him more out of like dribble handoff situations. Whereas with Hawkins, they'd run him off of like floppy and like pin
Yep.
downs and kind of zigzag him everywhere all over the court. Spencer, they did some of that, but they also ran him off of different actions and ran him, as more of a primary ball handler at times because that's what he was capable of doing. So, in terms of like detail oriented preparation, scouting, an offense that makes sense, Dan Hurley will be elite. Like I have no doubts about that. Like I think he will be ready to go every single game, basically. He will have them ready to fire. You mentioned the personality stuff, right? And I don't think this is an unfair sentiment. My impression of Hurley is that yes, bit of a loose cannon, but would hopefully be able to tone it down by like a bit in the
Okay.
NBA. There would be moments where he will lose his mind. But like I think that he'll understand what he has to do in order to reach the players that he has to reach. I will say, since we're talking specifically about the Lakers here, right? I am intrigued to see how a LeBron Dan Hurley combination would go both on and off the court. I don't think LeBron would be like super excited about like, Dan Hurley like yelling at him because Dan will be like he'll be fearless, like he'll do it. On the court, Connecticut like runs a lot of, ball movement-y stuff. And I think LeBron would be fine in that. But guys aren't really ball dominant in Hurley's scheme. You know what I mean?
So can I read what I sent to somebody, and I want you to tell me
Yeah.
where I was wrong, and if I was wrong with thinking this would be good for the Lakers, where Hurley doesn't fit. So I said I would want a coach that is an alpha, that does have a personality on par with LeBron and even AD, commands the room, demands a certain level of every player, holds him accountable. Probably means they have to have a certain level of stature or pre-existing relationship. I also think a coach with energy and enthusiasm important because at times that team seemed lifeless. And then
Yeah.
I said specifically offensively, show me a playbook with some creativity. If you tell me you're just going to isolate LeBron and AD, you can go on to the next team. That was kind of like, I had some other stuff that gets a little more detailed, but that's kind of what I thought this Lakers team would look like. I wanted them to bring in somebody with a big personality that demand the locker room, that would shake things up, hold dudes accountable, bring energy, bring life, and an offense that wasn't stagnant and slow and ISO heavy. Am I wrong in thinking that that could be successful? First off,
No, I think that it would be good.
is Hurley that guy?
I think he is that guy. I would be interested to know how much of that was Darvin Ham versus LeBron.
Sure.
LeBron has regularly been like the centrifugal force of a basketball team.
Yes.
Would he be willing to take that like small step backward? Maybe. I do think that like if you put Danny Hurley with like Anthony Davis win Defensive Player of the Year next year.
Yeah.
Like in that scheme where like they would vary his defensive coverages and would be willing to do a lot of different things. As long as he played 65 games minimum, I think he'd be elite within that scheme. I think he would be so fantastic. In terms of like the other stuff that comes with being an NBA coach, the 82 game grind, I think would be interesting for Hurley.
Yeah.
Cause like he does like to be pretty hands on and like on some level, like you can't do it that much in the NBA. Like games come at you, 4 times a week, 3 times a week, a lot of the time. And like, you have to be willing to like take a step back. Otherwise, like you're going to like your assistants are going to be miserable. Right. And your players are going to be a little bit tough. I think he would probably be able to do that, but it would be a factor, right? It would be a, let's see how this goes early on, even if I think it will be fine. The final piece of this is like, does he do it?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, that's important to talk about, I guess. Yeah.
The impression that I get is that like, this is in no way, shape, or form done. Like, I want to be like very, very clear about that. This is not like a fait accompli situation where, he's going out to LA and like 100% like signing that deal on Friday. Right. My impression is like, we're seeing where this goes still. I'm not saying like it's not going to happen. I'm not saying it is going to happen. I think that there are steps to get through still before we get to him like signing that deal. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, because I think, did Woj just tweet? Maybe he had already, that they're meeting Friday, right? There's a meeting in LA on Friday. This is hard for me too, because man, I can't help but feel bad for his players in a sense back at Connecticut, who are, left in limbo a little bit through this whole situation. And yeah, it's the nature of the business though. It's how it goes. And hopefully, I guess maybe it's resolved quickly. I will say another part of this that immediately, what does UConn do? Like, do we get a whole new coaching carousel in the middle of the summer, which doesn't normally happen with college basketball?
I would be, look, I don't know what they would do. I want to be 100%.
I mean, there's guys very like should be looked to be promoted if they didn't go with him, correct?
I think that's what would happen. I think it would be one of Kamani Young or Luke Murray.
Oh yeah.
I have an opinion on what I would do there. I'll wait until if this happens or not before saying anything.
Assuming both of those don't have aspirations to go to the NBA and be assistant coaches with him, like that would be. Sure. But I would like, it seems like those guys have big time reputations and value to the program, where it would seem that would be the quote unquote easy next step for Connecticut if, in hypothetical world, this came to fruition.
The other piece of this is that when a coach leaves, you get a 30-day window to hit the portal.
Yeah.
Right. If you are a player, if they did not promote internally from within, I don't know this. I haven't talked to the players on the roster or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Given the nature of college basketball at this point, I would imagine a number of those players would hit the transfer portal, and it would be a very real question as to where they would all end up. I would think that they would have to promote from within. Otherwise, they will risk, having to basically restart the program in a significant way. We'll see if this gets that far. Again, like, I don't have like a full scale sense of what, Hurley is going to do here. Like, I think that it is, it's going to be very interesting here in the next couple of days.